and no one's there to stop us. There's no regulatory body
And
to stop
we're off
anyone.
the rails. The rules are gone. Who knows? Maybe you
yes.
want to kill your father and sleep with your mother. Would you like to shock someone? We can do it. It's science, baby.
But let us
lock them up in a fake prison.
Yeah.
Get dogs in there. They'll salivate.
Will you commit war crimes for us? As long as you let us take notes during it and after the fact, we are happy.
Just the two of us. We can make it if we try. Just the two of us. Luis.
Hello, Curtis.
We are back together and more in love than ever. We have spent our time wondering. You had a guest episode. I had a guest episode. You were even there watching, which was kind of crazy.
That's kind of weird,
But
Kurt.
now we are back to the original format. Unbelievable classic. Unbelievable retro.
And I get to experience my favorite part of this whole thing, Kurt, which is looking back at your deep blue eyes.
Oh, you're so sweet to me, Luis.
Feels good.
But as you all know, today I am going to tell Luis 2 unbelievable stories from history. One of them will be true, one of them will be false.
And it's up to me to figure out which one is which.
Feels good to be back, doesn't it?
Feels good. I mean, our guests were fantastic, frankly, Kurt.
They were. They killed
they
it.
Really, they came in here with one task and they knocked it out of the park. And frankly, I'm upset that they picked up on this very quickly because it goes to show that we couldn't be doing this for over 6 months, and yet some random person we picked up off the street knows how to do this better than us. That's beside the point.
I know they really pulled back the curtain on our incompetence, which the whole purpose of this was to avoid that.
What, Kurt? I thought the whole purpose of this podcast was to do that in public. Because you do that every day to me personally.
It's very true. What I will say, Luis, is where am I? What's going on?
Oh, and that's how we're feeling today.
Let's get us back on track here. You guys know the format. Luis has got a fast fact for me. He's gonna give us a little warm up. Maybe the fact is true, maybe it's false. Before I get into my 2 stories.
And you know what, Kurt? I am feeling good about my abilities to detect truth or fact or fiction.
Ooh.
I feel like I can sniff out any BS coming from anywhere. So hopefully this is one way for me to prove that to you. If I don't, I've hyped myself up too much, and I will much like Icarus, I will fall a grave death from my hubris. But alas. So let us get started, Kurt. Are you ready for a fun fact? I've got one for you.
You said all that monologue right there, and now you're gonna be like, did you know that TikToks are made from dirt?
Well, anyway, Kurt, did you know TikToks are made from dirt? Nah, just kidding, Kurt. My fun fact for you is, did you know, or actually, true or false, riddle me this, Curtis. The British Army requires you to have 2 functioning teeth in order to join their forces.
Okay, if this is true, I desperately need to know what their definition of functioning teeth is. Do they mean like where there's like one right over top the other one so you can get some mashing in there? Or they just mean like you got enough of a tooth that it'll work? Like, does a tooth need something to teeth against? This is too much to consider.
Is teeth a noun or a verb?
Whoa. What I will say is maybe the real teeth was the friends we made along the way. And also, I feel like you knew that I was going to want this to be true, and maybe you're baiting me with it. So in an act of defiance, I'm going false.
Ooh.
I'm not even going to consider. I think that you knew I would like it too much and wanted it to be true.
Wow, Kurt.
I'm going false.
Well, you know, I knew you would like it very much, and I knew you were going to be this way and this difficult about this whole situation, Kurt, which you're right, it is false. The British Army currently requires you to have no less than 8 missing teeth. Or sorry, no more than 8 missing teeth. More than 8.
No less than 8 missing teeth.
Stop it, Kurt. Kurt, please.
You could even take out the army. The British require no less than 8 missing teeth.
Right. But yes, no, currently the British Army requires you to have most of your teeth in order to join the ranks.
They'll take all the teeth you can give them.
But if you have more than 8 missing teeth, they do not consider your mouth functioning, so they won't allow you in. However, Kurt, this does have a grain of truth within this story, because up until around the early 1900s, you did need 2 opposite-facing teeth at minimum to join the army. So one on top, one on bottom. Do you want to take a guess why? I'm
going to guess it's something having to do with their army rations. And no, throw that guess out.
Thrown.
Because you need to bite something to open it like a powder bag or something like that.
You're very correct, Kurt. So back in the day, back in the 1700s, 1800s, muskets were all the rage, as I'm sure you're well aware. you southern boy.
Oh.
But muskets were very much in full fling. And what do you do with a musket? In the barrel, you throw powder in, then your pellet, then you pack it all in, and then you shoot. The powder you would keep in either a horn or a tiny little pack that you would bite off as you're running to shoot. I don't know.
Right.
You would bite it off, or the black powder in, and then you put your pellet or your bullet in. So you need some sort of functioning teeth in order to bite this thing off. You're not going to sit down and just like start twiddling with your powder bag until it opens. No, Kurt, you're in the middle of a war and this is serious stuff. So you need to at least look like a small gopher to open these powder bags.
Yeah. It's weird that good mouth used to be included in something you need to be a soldier. Like, you don't think of your mouth being necessary in warfare a lot, but they used to have it.
I mean, Kurt, for me to be able to sign our lease, for me to be able to live with you, you required me to have good mouth.
Yeah, and that's true. And it was really tough when we had to put that fake tooth in your mouth so it would look like you at least had one over top of another one so we could sign the lease.
Listen, we all have to make sacrifices.
Because to anyone who's listening who doesn't know the terms of our lease, what happened is that like it was dishwasher included, but all the detergent for it is like powder bags, and you can't open it with your hands while you're like frantically trying to wash the dishes. So yeah, they had like a little dental exam and stuff, and we kind of had to hoax the leases, but that's neither here nor there. What we are here for today,
it's beside the point,
is deception.
Deception. Smoke. Mirrors.
All of the above.
Whatever else may come.
Yes. Okay. So without further ado, can I tell you a story, Luis?
I would be very angry if you didn't, Kurt, so please.
Bless you, child. Okay. This story I've been very excited to tell you because you and I have something in common with this protagonist.
Dashing looks.
We can both, hey, I'm not going to deny it, okay? But we have both been in a state before where you're just very bored and you come up with some weird idea to keep yourself occupied. Maybe you don't even know why. Over the years that we have conducted just strictly out of boredom.
This is true.
This is a story of a man who had an idea out of boredom, but it accidentally turned out to be a really, really good idea.
Before you continue your story, Kurt, is this one of your famous stories where I feel very much identified with the protagonist? Because we've had more than one.
Only you can say that, Luis. I am the messenger.
Oh, jeez. Tell your story.
So this is actually fairly recent, too. This is 2017 we're starting it, okay?
Good year.
So good year. Our protagonist here is a man named Uba Butler. He's age 25, and he lives in Dulwich, which is a neighborhood of London. Uba used to have a job writing TripAdvisor reviews for restaurants, so they would pay him £13 per review. TripAdvisor is, as you probably know, a way that people review businesses or restaurants, normally travel-related stuff, and they have a ranking system for every city. So, like, of all the restaurants in London, you can go and see the number one restaurant in London based on the TripAdvisor reviews. It's quality and quantity, okay?
Gotcha.
But so what his job used to be was that he would write fake reviews for businesses and then it would move them up in the rankings so then they get more business because they come up sooner in the search results.
Nice.
So he's thinking about that, like, I guess he was pretty good at this job because he's thinking about that a lot of the places he worked for, he would see them become super successful off this. And it's not even that they had a good business, but it's like, in his review, he talks about how the food is great at this restaurant, the ambiance is great, and the service is great. And none of that's true. The only part about the restaurant that's real is like the physical
restaurant
building itself.
Yeah,
The restaurant itself. So he's like got this idea of just kind of thinking about, I can fake all the parts of it except the physical location. What if I could fake the physical location too? Could I make an entirely fake restaurant?
Wow.
So Uba sets up a website for the shed at Dulwich, and it is a picture of the shed in his garden. Okay. He buys a burner phone to be the restaurant phone for £13. Instead of giving a specific address, he puts the street he lives on and labels the restaurant as by appointment only.
Interesting.
Now we come to the menu. Time for some shenanigans here. Okay, Uba, when he wrote the menu, he says this quote later that he wanted a concept, quote, silly enough to infuriate your dad. So on the menu, instead of any food items, it's just moods and then like a bunch of like a multi-course meal underneath that mood. So I'm going to read you the different moods on the menu, Luis, and you tell me which one of them you'd like to eat, and then I'll tell you what you've chosen.
Okay,
so we have lust, empathetic, contemplation, love, comfort, and happy.
All right. Well, I think you put it a little bit too easy for me starting off with lust, Kurt. Let's be honest here.
I think I put it a little too easy for everyone because everyone I told this menu to chose lust. So I don't know if that says something about me or the people I surround myself with or society as a whole. But here's what you just chose, Luis. Lust is rabbit kidneys on toast seasoned with saffron and an oyster bisque served with a side of pomegranate souffle.
Sounds like something the futurists would come up with. This is ridiculous.
It at least sounds like edible. Let me read you empathetic empathetic. I think that sounds like, at least in my opinion, the worst one. Empathetic is vegan clams in a clear broth with parsnips, carrots, celery, and potatoes served with rye crisps. It just doesn't.
That's just a stew.
Not tasty to me.
That's just something I make when I'm hungover.
So that's an example of one of the food items on the menu there. He also does a quote unquote food photo shoot with various dishes that look fancy, but they're made up of shaving cream, cacao powder, black paint, hand soaps, coffee beans, a few garnishes, and a fried egg.
That's what I call brunch, baby.
And one picture actually features a plate with an egg on top of Uba's foot, garnished with a bit of parsley.
Love a nice little fungal egg.
So now he has the whole website for the restaurant set up. Now it's time to submit it to TripAdvisor. So he submits it to TripAdvisor. It's of course, very not made up and looking super duper real and such, with his foot and a fried egg and a garden shed.
Yeah.
Within 24 hours, it gets approved. So it's on the TripAdvisor rankings now.
Right
the shed
on.
at Dulwich, the shed in his yard. It starts out at the very bottom, of course, because it has no reviews. So it's ranked 18,149th, the worst restaurant in London. Okay. So Uba starts feeding it fake reviews. He gets some friends and family to help him. After a couple of weeks worth of fake reviews, the shed breaks 10,000 on the TripAdvisor rankings.
That's quick.
I know. People start calling the burner phone and emailing the restaurant's email address trying to make reservations. Uba just keeps telling everyone that the restaurant is already filled up for the foreseeable future.
Oh, wow.
Here's some examples of the people who called right off the bat or tried to get a reservation. So a family tried to reserve the restaurant for a 70th birthday party 4 months in advance. A man tried to use his girlfriend's job at a children's hospital as leverage to get a reservation.
Oh my goodness.
And a few TV executives sent emails trying to get a reservation from their work emails, presumably to give them a better chance of getting in. So people are like really trying to get into this
People are
place.
trying to flex. I mean, it's that message of put something just out of reach of the most powerful, and they will do all they can to sneak into it.
You're exactly right. That's exactly it, because what Uba ends up kind of theorizing about this is that the restaurant, it doesn't really have a real address, right? It just has the street address. It's literally impossible to get a reservation. And the whole place is just cryptic and generally off-putting. So he kind of theorizes that maybe the exclusivity of the shed is making it seem like it's some prestigious restaurant. He's basically created like Dorcia from American Psycho, but really it's just a shed in his yard.
Oh, yeah.
But so now we come to August 2017. So remember, we started in April 2017. So we're only a few months down the road here. The shed is now ranked 156.
Oh my goodness.
And now things start getting out of hand. Businesses start sending free samples to what the approximate location of the shed is. There's a mountain of emails from people hoping to work together on some sort of promotion. The city council sends an email asking the managers of the shed if they're interested in moving to a new site in Bromley that the city is developing. An Australian production company gets in touch to offer to exhibit the shed across the world in an unnamed airline's in-flight videos.
Whoa.
And Uba attends a Skype call with a PR agency that promises to get the shed onto the Daily Mail with a Batman-themed launch and celebrity appearance.
Wow.
I'd like to put in here as a little note. I was really curious about this Batman idea because obviously there's been a lot of Batman movies, right? This is like one of the few periods in history where a Batman movie had not come out recently and there was no Batman movie that they were talking about coming out. So this PR agency is just like, Batman sells. The kids love Batman.
What if we drop the next big thing right here in your street, sir? How willing are you to have your shack destroyed by the Batmobile? Sign here if yes.
Let me posit this to you, Luis, though, because it sounds stupid.
Pass it away.
But if you were in Chicago still,
yeah,
and you heard about this restaurant that is a shed in someone's yard, and they're having a Batman themed opening, how hard would you try to get reservations?
Oh, I would.
I mean, come on.
I would move.
You would. I know
earth.
you, and you would kill to be at the Batman themed opening.
There are a few things I would not do to be at that restaurant.
You would drop all morals and semblance of humanity in an instant if it got you into the Batman.
Which that's already base level living for me, Kurt. So imagine dropping.
Yeah, there's not much to go, you know.
Yeah, once you're close to rock bottom, the next thing you have to do is start digging.
Yeah, so maybe there is something to the Batman idea. Who knows? So sometime around October 2017, the shed reaches number 30.
Wow.
I just want to pause for a second in the story quickly to appreciate this achievement, because this is literally just a shed in this guy's yard that he's put essentially an afternoon of boredom's amount of work into. I mean, plus the fake reviews. That is now, TripAdvisor thinks, the 30th best restaurant in all of London.
Well, what I'm thinking is that since this started out in April, he's been pumping out reviews nonstop. nonstop or getting his friends to do reviews nonstop, because that's the only way his restaurant's going to go up on TripAdvisor, right?
Yeah, right. It's all about the reviews, and obviously they're not going to get any real reviews because they're not actually a restaurant.
Right.
I will tell you that in all this time, I'm not sure at one point, but at some point they did get one negative review, but it was also obviously not a review from anyone who had been to the restaurant. So it was probably a negative review written by a fellow restaurant owner who wanted to take them down in the rankings.
Someone out of spite. It's kind of like the one bad review we have on Spotify, Kurt. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, fellow podcaster.
Fellow podcaster. Yeah, we're at 4
No doubt.
We're at 4.9 stars out of 5, and we don't have that many reviews, so we know who you are. We're looking out for you.
We'll do anything for that 0.1 star.
I will continue digging. I will move to I will find the next rock bottom. I will pull the core. I will find the deep burning core that's beneath this rock bottom and find this bad review.
You watch us. We'll make rock bottom the ceiling if that's what it takes to get our 0.1 star.
Anyway, with that out of the way, Kurt, I think continue your story, please. That was a sweet little tangent.
As I was saying, I think we've given adequate pause to appreciate the number 30th ranking. That's definitely what we've been doing during this time.
You know what I really like is that I feel like I can see myself on either end of this spectrum. Either the person just one day saying, I'm going to make a fake restaurant, see what happens. And on the other end saying, I will move heaven and earth to be there. Like I can see myself on each end of this story. So I don't see any bad guys into this
Yeah,
point.
that's true. Okay, so it's at number 30 now. The burner phone at this point rings almost constantly. The email is flooded with reservation requests. People start stopping Uba on the street outside to ask him if he knows exactly where the shed is and if he can get there. 30th seems to be about as far as they can get on fake reviews. They get stuck at 30 for a while. Uba can't seem to get them to move any higher than that position, no matter how many reviews he feeds into the system. Then on November 1st, 2017, Uba receives an email from TripAdvisor titled Information Request.
Oh, God.
Uh-oh. Why does TripAdvisor want more information about the shed?
How did TripAdvisor get this number?
Yeah, exactly. No, why they want to know more information is because the shed has officially become the #1 TripAdvisor restaurant in all of London. And of the 89,000 views it received in the past couple days, there's been a mountain of people who have reached out to TripAdvisor wanting more information.
Wow.
So 6 months after the restaurant quote unquote opened, it was the #1 restaurant in London.
Incredible. That's fantastic. This is lovely. I love where this is going,
Yeah.
Kurt. Keep going. Keep it going. I'm feeling good. I'm feeling exciting, feeling pumped for the story.
Yes, it's because it's getting crazy, but we're not done yet, Luis.
Oh, good.
So he's at the very top now. There's somehow even more calls than before. And now Uba is at like this crossroads where he's like, what do I do now? Because he's kind of like the dog that caught a car. Like, I don't know if you ever expected to get this far, and you can't go higher than #1. What else are you going to do with the bid after this?
That just means I'm just as good as the gods.
Yeah.
Better
Yeah.
even.
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know what this whole hubris thing is about. I'm above it all.
You really are Icarus, aren't you?
Be quiet, Kurt. Continue.
So there's only one thing left to do at this point. Something that has been explicitly avoided this entire time. And that is...
Sell your foot with the egg.
No, to become an actual restaurant.
Yes, they've pivoted.
Yeah, they've pivoted. So here's the preparations for quote unquote opening night, okay? So he's going to do 20 reservations, but half of them are friends and family who are going to be loudly complimenting the food and the ambiance. For the seating, there's chairs and tables set up on the patio as well as one table on the roof of the shed.
Nice. This is a very special table. VIP table, actually.
It is. So for the decor, he gets a child's playhouse and he fills it with live chickens so guests can pick out the chicken they eat, kind of like how, fancy restaurants will let you pick out like a lobster from a tank, right?
Oh.
For the ambiance, he hires a DJ to play CDs of restaurant sounds. Not like general restaurant ambience, like literal recordings of restaurants, so it sounds like there's busy people eating in a kitchen and stuff.
Right on.
And then for the food, Uba's friend is actually, he has a friend who is a trained chef, but the chef is going to prepare $1 microwaved frozen dinners for people.
Oh.
Total cost of opening night, $40.
Nice.
And he tells the DJ to make sure he adds lots of dings into the recording so that people don't hear the microwave.
Oh, wow. I thought it was going to be dings as in, the food's ready, or, to say it's like, coming out of the kitchen. No, it's because the microwave is done.
No, hide the microwave.
Just a couple beeps. in the middle.
Yeah, exactly. So we get to opening night. There's, of course, only a few real reservations. Uba meets people on the street and blindfolds them and then leads them to his backyard.
As you are one to do.
Exactly. One table got up and left quietly about 40 minutes into their meal. They just basically stared at a table on top of the shed and just kind of looked around at the place and were like, this is not it. and left.
There's no way it's this place right here. We've been duped.
They saw right through it, I think. Yeah. One woman got chased by a chicken. Uba comes over to help when he hears a commotion, and she's confused at why they would even have chickens. So he explains the concept of like, well, it's like how you can pick out your lobster from tank at a restaurant. And she says, but aren't you vegetarian? I only found this restaurant because it's a top-rated vegetarian restaurant in London.
Oh, no.
And he's like, oh, no. I'm being eaten by the very machine that took me to the top.
Damn, I feel the hot sun in my waxen wings.
Yeah, so that not a great exchange for him. However, one couple seemed to enjoy their meal.
Oh, good.
And they even asked if it would be easier to get a reservation for the next time. So despite all of this, one of the 3 reservations was like 5 stars. Good place.
This place would do again.
Yeah. So none of the guests were charged for their food. They were all told the meals were free since a TV crew was filming a documentary about the restaurant that night. I mean, there wasn't actually a TV crew, but they were told that.
Okay.
Realistically, for the charade, they would have to charge them like $40 or $50 for like a $1 microwave dinner. I think they just felt guilty about that.
Yeah. Good for them. I'm glad they did have a heart
good
at the
for
end.
them. The shed at Dulwich was #1 on TripAdvisor for 2 weeks. After the 2 weeks, Uba revealed it was a hoax. So it might have stayed up there indefinitely, I think, had he not said like, hey guys, I'm not a real restaurant. I'm just a shed. Of course, after he reveals it, this becomes an extremely sensational story. Uba wrote a couple of things or like got interviewed for a couple of articles. He did a lot of TV interviews. After a while, he's doing a lot of these interviews and he notices that people always ask him the same questions. And he kind of has this thought of like, people aren't really interested in me. They're interested in this thing I did. So if I could just hire someone who looked like me, who knew how to answer questions, I could avoid all this.
Yes.
He successfully hired lookalikes to do interviews in Australia, India, Bulgaria, and on BBC Radio.
Wow.
To go and impersonate him. And he basically just coached them on the answers.
And of course, he's pocketing all the money that he's receiving.
Yeah, of course.
Certainly.
I mean, I feel like that tells you right there that this guy, he's like the ideas man, you know?
Yeah.
He's like coming up with the ideas that no one else would think to come up with. Because, if he just done the shed, you could be like, maybe he just got really lucky with this one. But the lookalike sting is pretty brilliant, too.
That's incredible. I wonder if do you know if he got in some sort of trouble for fraud at any point?
No, he never got in trouble for any of it. He actually reached out to TripAdvisor and tried to do like some journalism work about how often do you guys think this is happening? Or you at all worried about that this is clearly pretty easy to do? And TripAdvisor had a really hilarious response, which was, we do get a few rare cases of people making fake restaurants, but it's pretty much always journalists trying to write a story about how you can make a fake restaurant.
Oh, nice.
So they're like, it is happening, but no one's doing it seriously. People are only doing it to show like you can do it and then trying to reprimand us about it.
Oh, wow. No, that's a good way to live. I think TripAdvisor fully leaned into that, just saying, is this happening? Yeah. Are we going to do anything about it? No.
I feel like the like unwritten text here is that I think he reached out to TripAdvisor and said like, hey, I've made a complete fool of your entire system. Do you have anything to say about this? And they're like, how dare you throw stones at us when you're spending so much time running a fake restaurant?
I mean, yeah, it's kind of like these services, like say a Facebook, say a YouTube, where the real content is what every other person that joins that website puts on there, right? Like TripAdvisor's not writing websites. They're just giving you the platform to do so. They're giving you the platform to be on it. So what do they have to lose? I mean, if they are just promoting a fake place, that's on you, like they did nothing wrong.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, as far as like their traffic and their user satisfaction is probably still about the same, even if they're promoting.
If anything, it will help TripAdvisor grow if people are finding this restaurant because of them. So I feel like TripAdvisor has no reason to be upset of this happening. Yeah. On the contrary,
No, you're totally right. And the story's like great press for them too. So everybody wins, except the couple who stared at the table on the roof of the shed for a long time and ate some of their microwave dinner and then left. They
Kurt, I think in their own way, they're winners too. How often? Think about this. How often do you get to see a dinner table on a shed roof?
That's true. And they stumbled right into some minor history and didn't even know it. So that's kind of cool too.
Yeah. So No, you're writing the book every day, Kurt. Not everyone can say you do that. So
Yeah.
I think it was a win all around for everyone. I bet those people are pricks and snobs that are just sitting around a dinner table saying like, "Oh yeah, we went to the shed and we actually realized it was a hoax the whole time," and they're very proudly admitting that they knew it was fake the whole time, but they didn't.
Is that something you would brag about or not? If you're like 40 minutes into it, I figured out this thing was a hoax. Because wouldn't you be worried people would be like, really? 40 minutes? You went in someone's backyard and saw a table on top of a shed and chickens running around, and it took you 40 minutes to figure out that wasn't a restaurant. Like, I don't know if it's something you brag about or something you like afterwards, whoever the other person they're with is, are like, tell no one.
This story stays with us.
We take this to the grave. No one must know about the shed. Let's move on to our second story. And Luis, I have some fun news for us because new continent just dropped.
Oh.
We've never been to Australia before, right?
Oh, hey, you know what they say about Australia?
Go ahead. I'm listening. Go ahead. On the spot. Yeah, pull it out right now. You got it.
All their food is prison food.
Yeah, that was good, Luis.
Thank you. You really had no faith in me in that one, Kurt.
I still have no faith in you. That didn't change anything. I'll tell you right now, Luis.
Injured on a personal level. Damn, feel betrayed. Feel betrayed like the Russian royal family, like poor dear old Anastasia who got shot not knowing any better.
Anastasia? Ain't that medicine what they give you so you don't feel nothing?
I hate it here.
Yeah, let's go back to 30 seconds ago when we were pretending to be friends and I was telling you this story, okay?
Pretending. Damn.
Australia. So this is in the 1950s in Australia. So a couple things about the 50s. First of all, in Australia, as well as everywhere, psychology was having a really big moment. So this is after Pavlov's dogs, after Sigmund Freud has already done all his work and died. But it's before the Stanford prison experiment and before the Stanley Milgram
You phrase that like he did his work and then died because of it. He did all his work. He told everyone they were in love with their mothers, and that was too much information to him. He died.
He wrote the last word of his last book about the family orgy or whatever, and then he was like, "Anything else?" No, that was it.
I'm done.
Right, yeah, no, I'm done. No, I'm dead. No, I'm dead. Yeah, I'm dead. Yeah. They're like, you could do it. No, it's okay. No, I'm good. I'm good. Really, I'm good.
No, seriously. Pack the wine up.
Anyway, Freud is dead and rotting in the ground and such not. Before the Stanford prison experiments, before the Stanley Milgram shock experiments. So
Sweet.
It's in kind of this period of history where we as a species have realized that we can understand and manipulate things like human behavior and development.
And no one's there to stop us. There's no regulatory body to stop
we're off
anyone.
the rails. The rules are gone. Who knows? Maybe you
Yes.
want to kill your father and sleep with your mother. Would you like to shock someone? We can do it. It's science, baby.
But let us
lock
take
them up in a fake prison.
Yeah.
Get dogs in there. They'll salivate.
Will you commit war crimes for us? As long as you let us take notes during it and after the fact, we are happy.
The 50s and 60s. Is it science or is it a war crime? Depends on whether or not you're a doctor.
Yes, the 1950s where a horrible crime can be passed away with, I had a notebook, officer.
They're like, you know what? Today, let's just put some people in a fake prison and see what happens, okay? I mean,
What
who
could
knows?
possibly
You
go
never
wrong?
know. What could go wrong?
It's a pretty uneventful Tuesday. What else am I going to do?
What else am I going to do? Make a fake restaurant out of my shed? No.
Oh, never.
Build a prison.
Of course not.
Build a prison. Yeah, so anyway, the point is that we've started to understand human behavior in the brain, but we don't yet know how to reverse engineer the brain or how to change or manipulate human behavior to the extent that humanity is going to understand it. Also, after World War II, Australia allocated tons of government money towards repairing the country. One of the things they did with this money is that obviously there's a lot of orphans created by the war.
Naturally.
So many of the orphanages in the country received large government grants. One orphanage called St. Joseph's Orphanage. It's an orphanage in Sydney, Australia. This guy named Dr. Albert Webster is in charge of the orphanage. He's an immigrant from Britain. He came over during the war. And this period of time, the person in charge of the orphanage is actually called an orphan keeper. So he is the orphan keeper, but he's a doctor of development and cognition psychology. Orphan keeper sounds so medieval, doesn't it? Like he's like in a dungeon with all his orphans or something. I don't know.
I think we should bring back orphan keeper, but for adoptive parents. Hey, little Timmy, your orphan keepers arrived.
But anyway, so in 1951, St. Joseph's Orphanage gets a large government grant. Dr. Webster uses the money to begin a new program that he'd been theorizing for a while. So he hires a zookeeper from a local zoo to bring 3 female kangaroos to the orphanage twice a week to interact with the orphans for a few hours.
Oh my.
Hold your thoughts, Luis. Let me tell you first the how of what they're going to do, because it's short of just how they execute this, and then we will get to the why. And we will get to the why.
I just, real quick before we move on, I was just shocked how all of a sudden we brought kangaroos into the picture. Like we were just hanging out, having a good time, talking about orphans. All of a sudden there's kangaroos in the mix. It's kind of crazy.
Let me set the scene. We're 4 lines into the notes of the Australia story.
Oh.
Britain is meddling with things. Kangaroos are in the picture already.
Oh my goodness. I don't know if I can handle this, Kurt.
So the kangaroos, again, this is 3 days a week, are brought to a walled yard behind the orphanage, and the children are released into the yard with a zookeeper, a handler, and several nurses to supervise. The kangaroos were all raised in captivity, so they're fairly docile around people, but obviously they're still wild animals.
I love the way you phrase that, Kurt. It's the children are released upon the kangaroos.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know which it is. It kind of feels like a prison yard type situation where they're like, hey, anything goes in this bad boy, but all y'all got to go out there and see what happens, okay?
Right. Yeah, be careful.
Yeah. So let's talk about why in the world is this happening.
Yeah,
okay?
please.
Dr. Webster is very interested in the scientific concept of nature versus nurture. So nature versus nurture is this really old psychology thing that it's basically this question of, are we who we are because of our genetics, like the stuff we're born with, or are we who we are because of our upbringing and like the things that happen to us during our life? Science is pretty much always going back and forth on which one of those is correct, or if it's both of them.
Or it's neither. It's a secret, very strange third option.
Dr. Webster at this point in time is team nurture, okay? So one possible concept here is that he thinks the idea is that the female kangaroos will act as a maternal presence for the orphans, and with enough interaction, hopefully they will identify the orphans as they're young, so they will kind of facilitate this like nurturing development of the orphans by acting as a parental figure. No word on if the orphans got put in the pouch, because I feel like that's got to be one of your questions, because that was my first question. Are we getting orphans in pouch action? And I cannot find anything one way or the other on whether it did happen or whether that was the goal, but I feel like Dr. Webster would not pass on an orphan going. I think if an orphan got put in a pouch, you'd be like, yes.
Sorry, Tom. I hate to inform you back in the studio that we are getting no word on the children being put in the pouches at this moment. We do not know if there are children within those pouches, Tom. I forget to tell you that.
We can neither confirm or deny the pouch
We've
rumor.
reached out to the kangaroos for comment, and they are unwilling to be helpful. They are instead punching our cameraman.
So that's kind of a fun explanation of this thing. I also have another explanation that fits pretty well that is not so fun.
Oh.
Dr. Webster was a bit of a eugenicist. Luis, can you give a little brief explanation of eugenics?
Absolutely, Kurt. I'm glad you asked.
You're like, I've been waiting for you to ask.
This is the first time in the 4 years I've known you, Kurt. I've been saving up for this moment. Now, Kurt, eugenics is the practice of, let's just say, breeding out the undesirables. The idea that you can advance or somehow speed up natural selection. So let's just call it what it is. Just breeding, as in a dog kennel. But instead of, I don't know, mixing a couple dogs to get a labradoodle, you do all your best to breed out all the quote-unquote undesirable traits that you don't want in an actual human child.
Yeah. So really simply, it's basically that like there's this idea that there's good genetics and there's bad genetics, and we should try to breed in the good genetics and breed out the bad genetics, which maybe like on paper sounds logical, but people always end up drawing this conclusion to racial genocide, which is not so cool. Dr. Webster is kind of like in a weird place on it because he's also a nurture guy, so he's like very anti-genetics, but he's also a eugenicist. But this all kind of fits together in that many of the children in the orphanage were Aboriginal, so people indigenous to Australia. There's some questions about if some of the children there were actually orphans or if they were taken from parents who had been deemed quote-unquote unfit.
No, this story took a bad turn.
Yeah, I know. And so Dr. Webster, because he's a eugenicist, so he's got this idea that you can have bad genetics, and he's also a proponent of nature versus nurture, with like nurture as a way that you can overcome genetics. That maybe he's got like kind of a white man's burden thing going on, that he's like, I have to save these children from their bad genetics by this crazy semi-risky experiment where I'm going to put him in a yard with kangaroos.
Semi-risky, Kurt.
Look, this is only because I don't know how docile a raised in captivity kangaroo is. They might be like a dog. They might be like a bear. I'm not crediting or discrediting anything to these kangaroos, okay? Who knows what they could be capable of, Luis?
Oh, my.
Luis, please. The kangaroos are in the room right now. Get help if you can.
Kurt, blink twice if there's a kangaroo behind you.
They've already got me, Luis. I'm in the pouch. I'm trapped.
Oh, no.
So the Kangaroo playdates go on for the better part of 1951 into 1952.
Good band name.
The Kangaroo playdates. Oh my gosh, right? So this gets some minor local fame, probably just because it's so weird.
That's a story of my life, Kurt.
Some of the psychology students from the University of Sydney visit to observe the program. James Arnold, who was a member of Australia's Senate at the time, visited. He didn't come on a Kangaroo Day, but in the interview he gave afterwards, he touted the cutting-edge programs brought about by government grants. So it seems like he's at least tangentially aware of the kangaroo playdates. St. Joseph's also appears in a list of locations visited by then Senator Richard Nixon during a trip to Sydney in 1952. So there is a non-zero chance that Richard Nixon saw orphans get put in kangaroo pouches. And I just want to sit with that thought for a minute.
And nobody ever asked him? Ridiculous.
In addition to all these notable people who are hearing about this orphanage, there's also an activist group called the League of Women and Children's Prosperity. They learn about this sometime in 1952. They're not very happy about the kangaroo orphan meetups.
Naturally.
And they began building a case to sue St. Joseph's for child abuse and neglect. Very reasonable. In response to this, St. Joseph's hears about this case that they're building. They decide to do a very radical move, which is to grant all the kangaroos temporary guardianship status of the orphans.
Wow.
How is this possible? So kangaroos have non-human person status in Australia. Non-human person status is given to animals normally to protect them from hunting or from environmental destruction.
And to Luis Mejia if he ever visits.
And to Luis Mejia. Everyone needs protection from Luis Mejia. But these animals specifically, basically the deal is that like they are given enough human rights that you can't hunt and kill them freely or destroy their environment, but they're non-people. They're non-human persons, okay? In 2010, Australia gave dolphins and whales non-human person status. Kangaroos have had non-human person status since 1922, except in cases of self-defense.
Do stand your ground laws apply to kangaroos?
Yeah, the stand your ground.
Oh my God. You better not catch a kangaroo in Mississippi.
But basically what St. Joseph's is doing here is they're implying that non-human person status allows a kangaroo to have guardianship over children, which is a bit shaky at best.
Wild, yeah.
But what this does, importantly, is that now the League of Women and Children's Prosperity, they have to actually personally sue the kangaroos for being unfit for custody.
Yes. Kangaroo court. Kangaroo court.
Oh, please. Hold your applause. We're getting there. We're getting there. So finally, this all gets put together at the beginning of 1953. This is approximately 2 years into the kangaroo meetups. Judge Walker is the judge assigned to this case. He is entirely unaware of what he's getting into, that poor man. The defendants are Dr. Webster, Jacob Anschels, who's the zookeeper, and one of the kangaroos named in all the paperwork as Kangaroo. So like two different names, right? The reason why it's all three of them is because Dr. Webster signed custody of the orphans over to Kangaroo on the paperwork, and then Jacob Anschels, the zookeeper, signed as a proxy for Kangaroo because obviously a kangaroo can't sign for themselves. But as far as Judge Walker, the judge of this case, understands, the defendants are Dr. Webster, Mr. Anschels, and Miss Rue being sued for the custody of 12 children by the League of Women and Children's Prosperity. So a seemingly very normal case.
Yeah.
But then we get to the court date, and there's a literal kangaroo in the courtroom.
Yes.
Judge Walker is hearing about all these kangaroo-related experiments with orphans that sound crazy. The defense team is arguing that non-human persons have the same rights as human persons unless explicitly stated otherwise. And the crazy part is they're kind of right because it seems like no one ever expected them to take this law and say like, yeah, a kangaroo can have custody of children or whatever. So the law, like the way it's written, it guarantees a bunch of rights to non-human persons. It doesn't say where there's any cutoff where there's like rights that a non-human person can't have that a human person does have. So they're saying like, you didn't explicitly say we couldn't do this and you gave kangaroos rights. So we're assuming that you can do this. The trial goes on for a few days. Dr. Webster starts rambling about child psychology every time he's asked a question and has to be cut cut off several times. The kangaroo actually gets loose twice and has to be restrained by the bailiff and 2 other zookeepers present in the courtroom.
Yes.
After 3 days, Judge Walker has seen enough. He suspends the court proceedings and asks the city government to open an investigation into the program since, again, it's all funded by a government grant. So not only are they doing this crazy thing, but they're using government money to do it. Sydney officials observed the study for a month before deciding to shut the program down and take back the grant money. And then shortly after, in 1954, Australia's parliament passed legislation clarifying what rights non-human persons have. They say in this legislation, any rights not listed here are not granted. But then in addition to that, they specifically note a few things non-human persons can't do. I guess they're just going to go ahead and like try to nip it in the bud before someone else tries a crazy idea. So non-human persons cannot own land, hold public office, have a bank account in their name, or receive inheritance. And they, of course, cannot have custody of children.
This is like all the rights women had pre-1920. I mean, that was not meant to be rude.
No, but you're right. I mean, it is kind of dark to compare, but yeah, you're right.
Seriously.
But I wanted to ask you, Luis. So this is like, these are the schemes people are going to try to, we're big fans of schemes on this podcast, right? And they're like, even though we already banned all this stuff, we want to be extra careful because these are the schemes that we can see on the horizon. And I want to know which one of these, Luis, you are using a kangaroo for. Okay, here's quickly the list again. Own land, hold public office, have a bank account in their name, receive inheritance, have custody of children. Which scheme are you going to use a kangaroo for? As
I'm going to give them a bank account.
Just a regular bank account?
Yeah, just give them a nice checking account. I just like the concept of a kangaroo at an ATM. Also tax evasion, but that's beside the point.
Pause for a second. You're going to have the kangaroo evade taxes. Is that what I'm understanding?
Well, because
I have news for you, Luis. Kangaroos already evade taxes. They don't pay any taxes
to this day.
To this day.
I see. There seems to be a flaw in my wording.
You would transfer all your bank account money into a kangaroo's bank account, and then
I would have all of my money delivered to through the kangaroo, and then the kangaroo pays me.
I see. Tax-free kangaroo income.
It's like an offshore account. I like to call it an off-pouch account.
Oh, that's nice.
Thank you, Kurt. Nice. Innovator.
Anyway, I have a last little detail, which you totally spoiled earlier, but this anecdote is believed to be the origin of the phrase kangaroo court. So the origin of this, like specifically, is that some people at the time thought that Dr. Webster's plan was to draw out and make a mess of the trial, which is entirely possible that was his plan. But basically, this would drain the legal funds of the League of Women and Children. So kangaroo court means a situation without fair rules rigged against someone. In this case, it would have been rigged against the prosecution because he wasn't really trying to win the case. He was just trying to outlast them.
I would say it's rigged against the kangaroos, Kurt.
That is true. The victim we don't get in all this is the poor kangaroos. Okay, they had a court date and everything.
Tom, we're back in the courtroom where we're talking to the kangaroos, which haven't had a chance to talk this whole time. So, kangaroos, sir, care to comment?
There's a lot of news updates interrupting this podcast, and it's all about kangaroos. It's very interesting what's going on with the news ecosystem at this moment while we're recording.
They say don't trust mainstream media.
Exactly.
Yeah, this is why.
But so what do you think about all that, Luis?
That's incredible. No, I love the fact that, like you mentioned at the beginning of the story, this is just the time when everything was running wild. No rules, no gods, no kings.
Only kangaroos.
Oh, yes, Kurt.
After this, no gods, no kings, no roos. No. That's what the court declared.
No gods, no kings, no roos, Kurt. Oh, that was good. No, I like this. I like this a lot, mostly because I've once again done it, Kurt. I'm afraid I've put myself in the shoes of the protagonist of this story.
Oh, you hopeless romantic, Luis. You've fallen in love with another. Wait, this story?
This story, Kurt.
Okay.
I feel like,
and I'm gonna give you a chance here to say that when you said protagonist, you meant the kangaroo and not the eugenicist doctor.
I'm going to put it this way, Kurt. I feel like I would find a way to excuse my behavior.
Oh,
okay. Let me change the wording there. I I think I'm really good at committing to the bit, Kurt, where I feel like if someone were to come to tell me, hey, Luis, you can't give custody of a child to a kangaroo, I would say, yeah, you and what king? You and what army? Who is to stop me from giving a checking account to a kangaroo? You? Absolutely not. You know what? I'm going to take you to court. And people would think it's just crazy enough that it just might work. That's the kind of boundaries I'm working. I'm not saying I am advocating for eugenics, because I'm not. I am a product of the failure of eugenics, Kurt. So
let me posit this, and you tell me if this is kind of what you're feeling.
Toss it away.
You're not the kind of lunatic who believes in eugenics.
No.
But you are the kind of lunatic to come up with some kangaroo-based scheme.
Absolutely.
And make a court case with kangaroos.
Definitely, Kurt. Kangaroo-based scheme is actually the name of my thesis paper in college.
So, on that note, Luis, tell me what's on your mind. We're back to like getting to do regular podcast format stuff. I haven't gotten to hear you struggle to guess which story is true or not in quite a while.
I like it, Kurt. I'm enjoying this story very much so. As you can tell, I've romanticized both of these stories very much. I love the idea of a kangaroo in a very nice suit and tie at a court. Anytime anyone yells objection, he punches someone. Like, that's awesome in my brain. So I like this, Kurt. So you know what? I think I'm ready to start deliberating.
Whoa.
Oh, shit.
What?
I apologize, Kurt. I forget.
No, it's okay. Just say it again one more time for me, please.
Okay, Kurt.
One more time.
One time for the record.
Mm-hmm.
Deliberation. Incredible.
And now we're in there.
And now we're back. So, Kurt, please remind me of the two stories we just heard.
Yes. So I told you, Luis, about the man who made his garden shed the #1 restaurant in London all through a TripAdvisor fake review scheme.
Yes.
And the eugenicist doctor who thought that maybe he could put some orphans together with kangaroos and become famous, but instead he just made a mess of a courtroom and lost his government grant.
Kurt, I think you're putting too much weight on the fact that he was a eugenicist.
Yeah, I mean, it could be entirely irrelevant to this story.
It's just something that I want to make sure I point out.
Yeah, like that could have nothing to do with the kangaroos, but I'm also not like, oh, they're eugenicists, but I'll cut them some slack. No, I don't care if this was really eugenics or not, okay? Everyone needs to know.
You're telling me the first story about the TripAdvisor, and it's like, yeah, he did this whole TripAdvisor scam, and also he was a eugenicist, but that's beside the point. All right, Kurt. You've got me on the ropes here, frankly, Kurt, mostly because I enjoy both of these a lot. On the first hand, TripAdvisor, like you mentioned at the beginning of the story, we've done a lot of things just because we were bored, and a lot of stupid things that we put way too much effort and work into to make perfect, even though the only people that were going to get anything out of it was going to be us two.
That's true.
So I can see that informing this story, and I can see that energy and that spirit into that story. So I think that's why I find it very easy to believe the fact that I can see myself, or even you, or even both of us, in that situation, Kurt.
Absolutely.
That's what gets me to that story. It's a very, at the end of the day, very human story, and a very human story of contemporary values. Like, what do we want right now? We want our 15 minutes of fame, right? We want our time in the spotlight. We want to go viral, if just for a day or two. And this man did it,
right?
Which is great. And plus, his name is Uba. That's wonderful. That's so good.
That is very fun.
Now, here's the thing about the other story, Kurt. Again, you mentioned this at the very beginning of it. 1950s, early 1950s, pre-Stanley Milgram, pre any of these other wild experiments. This is when psychology was going wild. This was when the U.S. government was testing drugs on people to see if they could figure out mind control. Anything's on the table. So again, Kurt, this is a time when this kind of experiment would happen. And plus, we're in Australia, where to this day, not a lot of people care about what's going on over there. Mm-hmm. Frankly, to this day, we're not terribly curious or keen into the ins and outs of Australia, unless you're, I don't know, from New Zealand, I guess. So I feel like this is something they could get away with. The part that I'm finding a little hard to believe, Kurt, is the term kangaroo court. Like, I feel like that's an older term than just this story, because firstly, like, I absolutely was ready to fully believe this story, like the whole time through. Then you mentioned the kangaroo court situation. And I don't know if you know this, Kurt, and I don't know if this is going to get me canceled.
Oh boy. Hang on, my finger's hovering right over the stop the podcast button. Go ahead.
I'm a big fan of Theodore Geisel's works. Theodore Geisel, also known as Dr. Seuss.
Oh,
now,
okay.
I do enjoy Dr. Seuss, and I don't know if you've ever read the hit book. The hit fiction novel, Horton Hears a Who.
Oh, dare I say, dude, Horton? Banger alert. Absolute banger, Horton Hears a Who.
Now, in Horton Hears a Who, there's a kangaroo character. It's the sour kangaroo and the little kangaroo in her pouch, too. Those are the two kangaroo characters. And she holds a literal kangaroo court, aka a court run by the sour kangaroo to make Horton testify before her to get him to say that the who's that live in the speck of dust that's in the four-leaf clover are actually not real. This is all part of the Dr. Seuss Horton Hears a Who lore.
I remember, and then Horton was like, no, they're non-human persons. You don't understand. Like, they're protected.
You don't understand,
except for the
Your
one
Honor,
that attacked me. That was self-defense. I stood my ground. Did I shoot him while he was running away? Maybe. But
Your Honor, I thought the jungle of Newell, the castle doctrine applied. So that's, like, I'm fully basing this off of my knowledge of Horton Hears a Who right now, Kurt. But I am going to think Uba's story of the travel advisor or trip advisor story is the real one. Mostly because I feel like this is one of those stories where at the one point, I'm kind of surprised I haven't heard of it before because it seems like it should have been a bigger story. On the other hand, when this happened, I was not very in tune with the news. And this seems like something that reached peak interest in a week in London and then didn't really make it trickle its way down other parts of the world. So I'm sorry to say, Kurt, that Horton Hears a Who has taken my mind and has informed my decision. So I'm going to say right now, the first story is the real one.
Horton Hears a Who has either betrayed me or misled you, and we have to know right now which it is. Enough anticipation. You're right, Luis. You're right. You nailed it. And I was pretty worried about the kangaroo court thing being too late in history because I think it was like from the Old West or something. And I was really worried that you were going to be able to recall something from a long time ago where they used kangaroo court or some reference to that. So you're absolutely correct. I completely invented the orphan kangaroo story. I'm a bit disappointed. I'll be honest, because I thought it was super duper convincing.
It was, I mean, frankly, Kurt, it was airtight. Like you had even kangaroo law and non-person law stuck in there. There was a point where I even tuned out a little bit when you started citing legal terms, if I'm being totally honest. So again, I was fully convinced and very much ready to accept this story. Like I had made my mind up in the middle of this story. And I'm going to be honest with you, Kurt. Frankly, if you had not mentioned kangaroo court, this episode probably would have been yours.
Wow. That was the straw that broke the camel's back. Yeah. But I got to say, I'm also really surprised that you had not heard of the Shed story before.
Yeah, not at all.
Because it was bigger than just the UK. Like, actually, I didn't want to say this at the time because I thought it made it seem way too real, but Uba Butler wrote like a big Vice article about it after the fact.
Oh, wow.
And I was talking about like how he sent the lookalikes to do interviews all over the world. It was like this thing that the internet was super obsessed with for a week, and people were like, look, this guy made a shed in his yard and it's a restaurant. And then like everybody moved on to the next thing. But since you're big in journalism stuff, I thought that it would have been something you would know because I think he is like primarily a journalist. But that was really, really fun to get to tell you and see you react to it firsthand because that is just a weird story. And also, like, I feel like I can picture myself ending up in that position where I'm like, I know how to fake TripAdvisor reviews. I got a couple weeks free. Let's see what happens.
I mean, I'm going to say right now, I faked reviews of products I've purchased online just to try and get another one.
Some unnamed businesses, perhaps.
I'm not going to mention names at this moment. But, you know, I can see it working. And you mentioned that, like I mentioned during the deliberation phase, I feel like me not hearing about it, like you said, it sure was big for a week and then it fizzled out. It seems like those kinds of stories that you hear a bombshell breakthrough for a week and everyone's talking about it for a week and then nothing, right?
Yeah, it totally is because it's not anything that affects your life at all. Like when you hear it, you're like, oh no, I better stop buying this certain thing at the grocery store or something. It's just like, that's interesting. And then you forget about it and the internet has a short attention span, so everybody moved on. So yeah, it was like a really major thing for a little while, but then it completely blew over and you probably just happened to not be super plugged into like current events for that week.
I was too busy living in St. Louis, Kurt.
A full-time job, no doubt.
Seriously. Takes your mind off of all other media.
But I got to tell you, I confess to you, Luis, nothing can take the wind out of my sails, even though, look, you probably were going to get it either way, because for some reason, you're just really good at telling when I'm lying. So I don't even care that you're getting the first point of the new season here and that you guessed it wrong. I'm very happy to be back doing this thing that we love, this thing that we started doing just for fun, and now I actually quite look forward to every so often I get to see you and tell you about some weird stuff, or you tell me about some weird stuff. So this has been very nice.
Yeah.
Like I said, our guests killed it. Loved having the guests.
Yeah.
Also love it just being the OGs, the originals.
It's nice. It's nice to see your face. I mean, Kurt won't tell you this, but this is the only time he allows me to talk to him every other week. So it feels nice for me too. A nice little FaceTime with my boy. But anyway, yeah, no, it is nice. It is nice to be back. Like you said, the guests were kick-ass. Absolutely, both of them, Elena and Jordan. But we're back and ready than ever, and we're ready to keep going.
Yes. This was a nice way to kick off season 2. We've got more to come, everyone. Hope you enjoyed listening to this one, though. If you really liked it, you can check us out on Instagram at UnbelievablePod or Twitter at UnbelievablePC. Tell your friends and family about it if you liked it. You can find our podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to your podcast. Luis, anything to add?
We've got a fresh new tally of 1-0 me, Kurt. So get ready. We're starting this off right. The smoke and mirrors are oh so abundant.
Very true. So that being said, goodbye, everyone. See you next time. And remember, do not bring a kangaroo in a courtroom. You'll lose the case.
See ya.